In my previous video, I mentioned the lenses I plan on using for the Sony A7C this year. After several years of shooting with the Sony A7C, I found that these lenses work best for my shooting style and take advantage of the compact size of the A7C. I have a couple different lenses with different focal lengths that don't box you into taking any specific kind of photo, but they allow you to approach the same situation differently. The first lens is the 24mm 2.8G lens. I've made a video about this lens in the past and it's a great everyday carry lens. I find it to be best at taking photos of people and landscapes, but it can also make a great street photography lens as well. The 2.8 aperture does great in all lighting situations. Even at night when you may have to crank up the ISO to 800 or 1600 because the A7C has excellent low light performance. The added bonus of this lens having an aperture ring when the A7C does not have a front dial makes it a perfect match. This lens does have some extreme distortion and vignetting issues, but a simple click of profile corrections in Lightroom will fix all of those. Here are some photos I've taken with the 24mm 2.8G lens. I'll start this by saying the 35mm 1.8 is probably my favorite lens I've ever owned. I keep this lens on my camera by default most of the time, so it's become my go-to lens. For me personally, I found that 35mm is kind of just that all-around perfect focal length no matter what you're photographing. Previously, I used the 35 1.4G master lens on my A7C, but over time it began to feel a little too large and a little too bulky and front heavy on the A7C. I didn't really enjoy walking around carrying that lens. I decided to pick up the 1.8 because that 0.4 f-stop difference really doesn't make that much of a difference when you're actually out shooting. The only real caveat to this lens is that there's no aperture ring. If that's a deal breaker for you, I highly recommend checking out the Sigma 35 f2 lens. The reason I decided to go with this 35mm lens over other options is because I wanted at least one f1.8 lens in my camera bag, so if I want a lower depth of field for portraits or if I just simply need better low light performance. This lens is incredibly sharp, and honestly it's just as sharp as the G Master. You won't notice a difference. This lens is basically perfect for me, and even if it's slightly larger than the other two lenses I'm talking about in this video, it's still a very nice size for the A7C and it's still compact enough. Here are some photos I've taken with the 35 1.8 lens. The final lens we're going over is the 50mm 2.5G lens. It's the same size as the 24mm, so you know it's super compact. I just recently picked up this lens after selling my 85mm 1.8 lens. The 85mm focal length was a little too tight and compressed for my shooting style, so I've decided to replace it with this lens, and in my short time with it, I've grown to love it. And I'll be honest, in my 7 or 8 years of doing photography, this is my very first time owning a 50mm lens. And honestly, I was surprised to find out that even though it is tighter than a 24mm or 35mm, 50mm is still a great focal length if you want a lens for everyday carry. The aperture on this lens is 2.5, but it still allows for some nice bokeh if you're taking portraits. Like I said, I just recently purchased this lens, so I haven't had the chance to shoot with it too much yet, but here are some photos that I've taken so far with the 50mm 2.5. In conclusion, having a 24mm, a 35mm, and a 50mm lens in your camera bag is kind of that perfect trio of lenses. So depending on your shooting style, you could always go with a 24-70 zoom lens, but that kind of defeats the purpose of having compact lenses, especially on the A7C. When I go out and shoot, I like to choose one of these lenses and stick to that the whole time I'm out. I think using prime lenses helps you be a little bit more creative and makes you think about your shots a little bit more. I decided to take the same photo from the same spot with all three lenses to give you a better idea of the different focal lengths. Naturally, with lenses, the wider a focal length is, the more obvious it's going to be. So 24mm compared to 35mm is going to be substantially different when comparing a photo shot at 35mm to a photo from 50mm. But you may have also noticed that I purchased these lens hoods for the 24mm and 50mm lenses. They look great paired with these lenses and the A7C because they add to that retro look. They are expensive for lens hoods, but I highly recommend them. I bought a different one for each lens so I don't get them mixed up. So I hope this video could give you a little bit of insight into finding the right lens for your Sony A7C. These lenses fit my shooting style best, so remember this is my opinion and everything I say in this video is not a fact, but I am happy to answer any questions in the comments down below about lenses or focal lengths if you have any. Regardless, especially if you are looking for a first lens for your camera, all of these lenses are a great place to start and you can't make a wrong decision here. Also, all of the photos in this video are edited with my brand new preset pack that I just released. This preset pack is definitely a natural progression in the way I've been editing my photos as of recently. I've been leaning in toward a more filmic, nostalgic look to my edits, which I think fits in perfectly with the direction I plan on taking my photography in this year, photographing more rural areas rather than big cities. So if you're interested in checking that out, the link is in the description. And with that, thanks for watching the video, guys. If you enjoyed this video, please like the video and subscribe to help support me so I can continue growing and reaching a larger audience. And I hope I could inspire you guys to get out and take more photos. Go out and shoot.